Pockets have never been purely for fashion. Even when they looked like this, or like this, they still needed to function. Until now, apparently. Clothing manufacturers seem to think we just like the look of pockets. Let's correct this oversight. First, we're going to rip out this seam between these two endpoints marked by thread. On your pants, they may be metal rivets. And let's move on to the second pocket. Now we have two pocket openings but no pockets. Measure and mark how big of a pocket you need. I have this piece of fabric folded and placed over the pocket opening. There are fabrics some people prefer for pocketing, but this is scrap fabric. You can use any fabric you like of any color. Secure the fabric down. Leave seam allowance at the top. I'm leaving 5/8 of an inch above the bottom of the waistband. Measure how big of a pocket you would like. I like to measure so that it fits my phone, but you can measure with something else, like your hand. I had the pants owner try them on and put her hand in the pocket slit to a comfortable level and marked it with a pin. If you try this method, be careful that the pin stays intact as the pants are taken off and handled. Draw your pocket shape and add seam allowance. I chose 1/2 an inch because of the seam finish I plan to do. Cut your pocket out and be sure to include the seam allowance. You only want to sew partway up, so mark the pocket opening with a pen or a pin. For most sewing machines, you want to sew a test scrap first to test the thread tension. For instructions on adjusting the tension, see your machine's sewing manual. Even if you've lost it, you can find almost any manual on the internet. Sew the pocket together using whatever seam finish you like. I'm using a modified French seam, first sewing right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Pressing, trimming down the seam allowance from a 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch. Flipping into the curve, flipping the corners, turning the pockets right side out, and then poking out the corners with my favorite tool, a pen cap. I did this to both pockets and remarked that opening with a pin. I repeated the step of sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance so all the raw edges are encased and will not fray. Press again. Now to attach the pockets to the pants. Measure that seam allowance again. I'm attaching the pocket flange to the serge seam allowance on the inside of the pants and marking the pocket opening with a pin. This is the inside so the thread doesn't have to match. I'm just using black. Sew the side of the pocket down. The stitch you use doesn't really matter. Mine is kind of a horrible ladder stitch. Pause once you reach the pocket opening pin. Tuck the side of the pocket facing the outside through the flap and out of the way. I accidentally sewed a little too far, so I had to open up the seam a bit more. Fold over the seam allowance the rest of your inside flap. Secure to the pants with pins or clips. Sew the rest of the side seam. Dealing with the top of the pocket, make sure the outside flap is still tucked away. Fold over the seam allowance and secure down with pins. Sew along the top. Make sure this is done with very strong back stitches. You can hide the stitches from the outside in the line of stitching just below the waistband. Now that the inside is sewn down, turn the pants right side out again. Making sure everything remains flat and unwrinkled, secure the outside of the pocket with pins. For this part, I'm using the tan colored thread to mimic the top stitching already present in the garment. I'm using a double thread, so I'm waxing the two lengths together so they will hopefully stay untwisted. It's best if the ends of the pocket are folded towards the outside. I sew a lower line of stitching to mimic the two lines of top stitching I ripped out at the beginning. I secured down the rest of the inside, as I'd left some ease to make the previous step easier. Cut off the excess pocketing while still leaving a small amount visible above the pocket opening. If I had to guess, I'd estimate 1/8 of an inch. Fold this over towards the outside so the raw edges are hidden away. Stitch this down with a second line of stitching above the first. I am using a back stitch that mimics the machine stitching seen elsewhere in the garment. You come up one stitch length ahead of your previous stitch. Then come back down right where your last stitch ended. This ensures a continual line of stitching. Once that is finished, you have just one more step to go. We need to attach this flap down to the back of the pocket. Make sure everything is flat so there's no bubbling. I attached it with vertical stitches like this to minimize fraying. You can see that there is a little bit of bubbling of the flap. To prevent this, you should secure it down with pins before you sew. And there you are, 2 front pockets that actually do their job.